Straight talk about the issues you care about the most. It's LaVeist and ClaVille, empowerment for the culture. Now, your hosts, Dr. Wil LaVeist and Dr. Eric ClaVille.
Hey, I'm Wil LaVeist. He's Eric ClaVille. You tune into LaVeist and ClaVille, where we give it to you straight the way it is, from a black male's perspective, because it's like that and that's the way it is. And so we're starting off this new show in 2022, looking back at what we covered and talked about in 2021, which is absolutely another crazy year, not to mention that obviously the pandemic and the way that that has affected everybody. And then how the year even started off, new president, and then a insurrection that we had never thought we might see ever in our lifetime happening on January 6th. But there was a variety of issues such as those that we talked about on LaVeist and ClaVille over the past year in 2021. And we want to just recap and talk about those, right, Eric?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, Happy New Year to you, Wil, and also Happy Founders Day to the Go Mobs.
Absolutely. Blue 5. My brothers at Phi Beta Sigma. Today we're filming on recording on January 9th, which is our Founders Day, January 9th, 1914. Got my shield in the background for my brothers from out in Ghana in honor of my illustrious brother Kwame Nkrumah, who's also a Lincoln alum, as well as I am, Mu Chapter Lincoln University. So appreciate that, brother.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, when we talk about the year in review, you know, I look back and you and I, we've known each other for almost a decade now, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You know, and you know,
does it look it? We still look young and fresh and clean.
Still look great, you know, and still doing great things. And you know, you and I, we had an immediate connection on the show, you know, the Wil LaVeist show. Actually, we met on Barbara Lee's show first.
Right, Another View down in Norfolk, Virginia, WHRV, right?
WHRO, yeah. With her and our sister Lisa Golly, and we just kind of had a connection on the round table. So then you, myself appeared on your show, and then now, you know, you appearing on my show, State of Water, also broadcast in Norfolk on WNSB, and now we talked about getting this together. Right? I mean, you brought it up, and we just didn't have the time. But the pandemic brought us all the time.
I'm telling you, it's brought a whole lot of people a whole lot of time, man. I know your wife has been seeing a whole lot more of you and enjoying that time, man. So just don't make any more babies, man.
Like I think that time was past, but but you know, it gave us an opportunity to really sit down, think about what we wanted to get out there and do it. And with our producer, you know, Benjamin Bailey, who's working hard behind the scenes, making sure that everything we do is pristine, top of the line, excellent spirit of excellence, professional, and all of that. We have LaVeist and ClaVille, and we're 1 year of episodes, and it's absolutely amazing, you know, what we were able to do.
Absolutely. Shout out to Ben. Absolutely.
You know, so this idea, we started talking about it, you know, and I guess in end of 2020, and it finally came together, actually close to mid 2020, and it finally came together, and we launched the first episode in March of 2021. And with that, we talked about, you know, we actually went straight for the jugular, where we talked about issues that people don't really want to talk about, what we call kitchen table talk.
Right.
You know, but what we do in this particular show is that we give it to you straight from a black educated male perspective, but at the same time we look at the issues in what we call in global. So we look at it from all angles,
right?
And we come down to a conclusion that, hey, you know, maybe there is an answer here, maybe there's not, but ultimately you make the decision yourself.
Yeah, so and try to bring some real facts, and especially with both of us being educators, bring some research and real information to it, because there's a lot of information on the internet that really just comes down to opinion. And you know what they say about opinions, So, opinions are okay. Everybody's entitled to one, but it's really only facts that stand the test of time.
Absolutely. Look,
And opinions come with a whole lot of odor with them. So,
well, look, you said opinions. I got another description for it, but I'll leave it at opinions. But the first episode, we talked about little to nothing. Why blue collar voters vote against their own interests.
Right.
You and I, we talk politics all the time. You've covered a lot of it as a journalist, as being a writer yourself, an author, professor. Of course, I deal with it every day. Law, policy, and politics, and education as part of my life, my career. And one thing that you and I just bang our heads on the wall about is, why do we vote against our interests? If you know for a fact that you need this in your community, if you know for a fact you need this on your job, then why vote for somebody that's not going to give it to you?
Right.
Or somebody that said they're going to give it and never do it over and over again. So we dealt with that, and in dealing with that issue, we, we actually bring up a lot of examples, both current and past,
right,
of why these issues are the way they are.
Yeah, and the thing about it that's, so startling, and it happens over and over and over again, is that people get caught up in their emotions, and particularly politicians will pimp people's emotions and make all of these promises that they really have no intention of keeping. But it's really about them being able to get in position of power and do the things that they want to do to advance their own interests. And it's a shame, because there are real needs out there that people have to be heard, to have their issues addressed. And again, when emotions rise and you're able to prick and pimp people's emotions, this is how people end up voting against their own interests.
Exactly. And then in the month of March, we actually talked about socialism or survival. We talked about, could a guaranteed income help eliminate poverty? And look at what happened during the pandemic. Individuals got stimulus. And I mean, and that stimulus helped to stave off hunger, poverty. You name it, eviction. It helped to stave off a lot of issues that people were dealing with, man. And not only that, but it really helped people in general. So I'm not saying we were ahead of the curve, but.
Man, it's funny. I heard a comedian recently, and forgive me, I'm forgetting this brother's name, but he talked about this very same thing. He talked about it in the context of reparations. He said, wait a minute, and we were talking about reparations, and folks are saying, well, African Americans can't get reparations because there's no money available to give reparations for slavery and for legal segregation and Jim Crow and so forth. And so they said, wait a minute, where everybody come up with all this stimulus money from? There's nobody come up with billions for stimulus. So it's just really something. It's just ironic, man. But to your point, the stimulus did very much help a whole lot of people keep their heads above water.
Like, not just keep their heads above water, but again, like I said, it helped people survive. It helped people. People suffer. And the pandemic really showed a lot of that. And in the month of March, we talked about the pandemic itself. 1 year later, we looked at what COVID-19 really did to America, really did to it, but also what it really did to the world, America, but what it also showed the rest of the world, especially white America, what Black and Brown America have been dealing with all these years.
Right.
It uncovered a lot of social and health and economic inequities.
Right. And it also showed, as you said, the disparities, because the people who were dying at the highest rates were people of color, African Americans, indigenous people, Latinos were dying. A lot of the people who are in those kinds of jobs that are lower paying on the front line have to be physically present to do the job. We found that a lot of these were the individuals who were in these roles. and actually very much critical roles that's helping to drive the economy in many ways. And then we start seeing when the vaccine does become available, the disparity in terms of who is getting access to the vaccine, and that continues to be an issue now because the richest countries are the ones who have been able to administer the vaccine to most of their citizens, whereas the poorest country across the world are still very much lacking. So the inequities, you're right, the pandemic absolutely exposed the inequities. If people that many researchers have already been talking about and writing about and crying out about, if you don't see them now as a regular citizen, it's just that you got your head in the ground.
Absolutely. And then also in the month of March, we talked about hate crimes in America and our schools when we talk about issues of education. And we also discuss immigration and Black athletes and HBCUs.
Right.
Now, again, this was 2021 March. And when we talk about HBCUs and Black athletes, look at what has happened at HBCUs and the jockeying for the coaching positions for these football teams. I mean, look, hats off to Deion Sanders.
Jackson State, right. Yeah.
Hats off to him for bringing the attention to HBCUs, bringing it back. Because keep in mind, we look at all these African-American Hall of Famers in the NFL prior to the 2000s. Over half of them came from HBCUs.
Came out of HBCUs. Mean Joe Green, Jerry Rice, Walter Payton. I mean, you can go on and on down the list, and you see, yes, absolutely, because at that time, only the Black athletes, the best athletes, were going to HBCUs because, again, African Americans weren't allowed and were systematically locked out of going to these other schools. And then when they started to see the talent and see the talent pool and how they could resource the talent pool, now you see major universities, Alabama, Georgia. I mean, if you know any history about Alabama during the time of Bear Bryant and prior to that, you didn't see any Black athletes on the field. And so now it's just ironic how you get many of these schools, almost the majority of the athletes oftentimes are Black, but yet the student body is still very much segregated. So you have to wonder, is it racism? Is it that the students aren't able to qualify and compete, or is it that it's being intentional recruitment to have a Black athlete, whether male or female, on the campus in a particular capacity? I say it's all about being intentional. So if you can be intentional to bring a Black athlete on your campus, you can certainly be intentional about bringing in a Black biologist or engineer on your campus as well.
Absolutely. I would go to conferences, education law conferences, and we were talking about diversity, right, and recruitment. No one could find talented African American males. So, I just kind of got, fed up with hearing that rhetoric. So, my colleagues knew what I was going to say because I said, listen, everybody in this room that's saying you can't find talented African American males, why don't you actually go to your football coaches and ask them to give you a seminar?
Right.
Because obviously they can go to the back roads of Mississippi with no signs, where GPS probably don't work.
Right.
And sit down in the living room with a kid and bring them all the way across the country or to the Midwest or to a place that they've never seen before and sell them and give them a full scholarship and support them in their areas of need and challenges in order to get them on the field of play.
Right.
To make money. So, at the end of the day, we all do what we want to do.
Right. And we know because HBCUs continue to graduate lawyers and doctors and engineers at a higher rate than PWIs, that Black students are very much capable at excelling in these other areas. Absolutely. So if you're really serious about recruitment, then, like you said, you would be intentional about your recruitment. Now, the flip side of it is that our HBCUs, of which both of us are grads of Lincoln University, Pennsylvania, you're from Southern down Louisiana. I mean, we benefit in that our institutions over this past year, with the ascension of Kamala Harris and others, people beginning to see the value that HBCUs have always brought to the table. So I think that it's a beautiful thing that our institutions are getting this deserved attention. And now our institutions are positioning themselves to be able to compete on a level playing field. That's really what it's about. We know that we've been able to compete with disadvantages. Now let's see what we can do by giving us the full funding that's deserved that the other schools are getting, and see what we can do. And I think that you'll see our students will do miraculous things. We've already been doing miraculous things.
Exactly. In other words, we've been doing it with less. So now give us our just due.
Right.
Watch what we do now.
Right.
So, we moved on, we progressed in the year in the month of April. We started talking about reparations. We started talking about real issues dealing with African Americans because, we dealt with justice for George Floyd. We dealt with driving while black. We dealt with voting rights. Is it a step in the right direction? These are all issues that affect the Black community hands down.
Right.
And all these issues centered around the community and policing. As a matter of fact, in May, we dealt with the color of police encounters and successful while black.
Right.
And again, we dealt with reparations once again. And Will, we also went to the NFL and HBCUs again because, even though we are producing these athletes, HBCU athletes were not getting the looks from NFL teams. Now we have a handful that do make it, but it's more that we saw and we all know deserve an opportunity.
Right.
Again, not a handout, but a hand up in order to show the talent that they have.
And I think that one of the beautiful things that's begun to happen is some of the top recruits. You mentioned Deion Sanders earlier. He's recently has gotten another top recruit in the nation to come to Jackson State, to come to his university. It was in others that have gone to other institutions such as Hampton, such as Howard. I know there was a basketball player, forgetting his name right now, that was a top recruit and went to Howard University. And I think that the students and their parents are getting smart and realizing, hey, in this internet era, right, there's an ability for scouts to see you using the internet, to look at your tape that you upload, to see your ability to play. The size of the field, the size of the court, the rules are all the same. Yes, the size in terms of the size of the athletes may be different when you go from D1, D1A, Division II. But if you can ball out, you can ball out. And the NFL, the NBA, whichever the league is, if you have that kind of NBA quickness, NBA speed, whether you're playing at D3, D2, if you have that kind of talent, they will put you under the training. They will give you the diet. They will prepare you to be able to excel at the highest level. And how do we know? Well, we see every year Division I players coming out and get drafted and flop out, don't do well. We see number one draft picks not pan out in the NFL. We see number five round draft picks excel and become Hall of Famers. So the point is if you can ball out, if you have the talent and ability, no matter the level, you can be seen, because the internet and the way the scouts go out and do things now enables you to be able to be seen. And you don't necessarily have to go to Alabama or Georgia, or the big schools, and actually end up not getting a degree and essentially being exploited for your talents. And, the other thing that's come out is how athletes are now being positioned and have fought back to be able to monetize their own talent, at the NCAA level. So that's another positive thing that has come out as well. You see how athletes taking advantage of that.
It's funny you mentioned the decision that came down, because That's a major decision. And
Mm-hmm.
the NCAA tried to use black faces to justify an age-old rule that benefited white males only about, quote unquote, the student athlete, which was really created as a cover in order to create wealth and not pay these young men for their labor. So, like you said, they use them up. I mean, they give them housing, they give them food, and a few gadgets and shoes when they go to bowl games and so forth. And then after that, they send them on their way. Sounds like an old system in America, right? But
very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
You know, but we're not going to talk about that now. But in 2022, we'll talk about that later. You know, but Will, we shifted in May because it was a major shift in society, right? Black Lives Matter. We saw a lot of that after the year, and we were looking at these issues 1 year later. So we talked about protests to policy, and we also talked about protest versus lobbying in order to get things changed.
Right.
And then we shifted toward this idea of the black tax. You and I have been talking about this additional effort, this additional look, this additional tax that's placed upon black professionals and just black people in the work environment and in the communities operating in society. And we dealt with a lot of those areas, not all of them, because we've got some more areas we're going to deal with.
Right.
But the black tax was really, really important to us.
Yeah, I mean, it's often, I think about, like right now, I think about how when President Obama ascended and became president, how the optimism that came with that and the actual question that people started saying, are we now post-racial? Have we entered a post-racial phase in America?
Van Jones making that statement, sitting on the platform.
Right. And then to think that as time went on, that the Black Lives Matter movement erupted during his administration, showing that very much no, because there are systemic issues going on that are embedded deeply in the DNA of America that puts African Americans, people of African descent, at a second-class citizenship level. So even though we've changed the laws, practices, as you talked about often being a policy guy, practices in the way that we actually still do things still exist on that old, very much rooted in American DNA system of second-class citizenship. And so we talked about these different things. The tax, that black tax, addresses and looks at what are these additional barriers that we must confront and even confront within our own community, because there's all kinds of different effects that happens to people as a result of being raised and bred in a racist society. So there's internalized racism that goes on, as well as institutional racism, as well as others. So the black tax addresses that, looks at what are those barriers and what is it that we need to do to overcome them still, because we are anything but post-racial.
Yeah. And to talk about how America still has so far to go because of systemic practices that are discriminatory, it boils down to what we dealt with in June, protecting the big lie. It was, when we talk about the big lie, we're talking about, of course, the big lie about, what led to the January 6th insurrection, which we're only 3 days post that particular terrible incident that took place in our society, and how it's still, people still believe that.
Still believe.
And we kind of started dealing with education of America. So we dealt with in June, not just protecting the big lie, but the miseducation of America, of white America, dealing with critical race theory, and what that leads to, which is riots, murder, and genocide, where we looked at the 100th anniversary of the 100th anniversary commemorating Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood neighborhood. So those issues rose to the top, when we talk about education and miseducating white America about Black America.
And the thing that I found additionally shocking is that, okay, throughout American history, there have been elections that have been, disputed or challenged, questionable, shenanigans have gone on. But it seemed like throughout our history, we still had a practice or an ethos or a respect for the overall health of the nation.
Yes, sir.
That even if we felt that something was not quite right in the election, was not 100%, that we would still respect the passing of the torch, the changing of the guard. And I'm thinking, like right now, I'm thinking about, second George Bush and Al Gore election, the hanging chads. We're old enough to remember that down in Florida where his brother, George Bush's brother, was the governor.
2000.
Yeah. And all of the controversy, very much legitimate controversy over that, yet Al Gore took the position of, the retaining of the union is more important than my individual winning or losing this vote and challenging it and risking tearing the nation apart. And it seems like just in 2021, with that insurrection and with the previous president, that just went out the window. And with the Republicans and how Republicans and Democrats are going at each other in Congress and in government now, it's like that has just gone out the window, that we don't even have a respect for the retaining, the keeping the union together. And so you have to wonder, when you, as a historian, someone that recognizes history, as you do, ClaVille, from the standpoint of the law, you have to wonder how much of this is really an old argument taking us back to, the Civil War, that old strain that has never been really fully honestly dealt with, this, and we've seen writers and we've seen people looking at that and saying how much of what we're seeing now is still the remnants of that old argument that we thought was old, actually isn't very old at all.
Yeah. Will, you hit the nail on the head. My wife and I just talked about that the other day. How I mentioned how looking at the insurrection, the 1 year anniversary of it, how this is reminiscent of the Civil War and the mistake that we made not to deal with the issue that caused the splitting of our country. We saw that pop up again over 150 years later in Washington, D.C. So we got to deal with these issues head on. If we do not deal with the issues, the truth of it, the hard truth, then we're going to see it happen over and over again. Which kind of leads us to, we did a season 1 overview. You can find it on our social media site, LaVeistClaVille.com, or at LaVeist and ClaVille. But we kicked the year off. We kicked the season off 2021. I remember on MLK Day, right? And we asked the question, where are we now? And I thought that was very befitting of kicking off, LaVeist and ClaVille, and talking about really where is not just African American community, but where is America? And I think in the first year, we dealt with a lot of issues showing where we are, from the Black Tax series to policy issues to politics to cultural issues,
right, all
the way to the hard, true facts about how far we have to go. And I'm pretty excited about where we're going, with LaVeist and ClaVille.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to what we're going to do in 2022, and what it has in store. I mean, it was certainly surprises in 2021, and I've learned to embrace the unexpected. So let's see what we got.
Absolutely. And look, I thank you, my good friend. It's been a heck of a year. And we're looking for this year coming up to be even better. Absolutely. Again, we want to thank all of you for joining us for LaVeist and ClaVille for this episode. We want to thank our producer, Benjamin Bailey, who always keeps us straight and makes sure that everything we do is top notch. Continue to support us. Watch our past episodes in this episode at LaVeist and ClaVille, or you can catch us at our website at LaVeistClaVille.com. Until next time, that's the way it is. Be well. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of LaVeist and ClaVille. Make sure you subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. For information or to connect with LaVeist and ClaVille, check out our website at www.LaVeistClaVille.com. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to @the LaVeist and ClaVille on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. This has been the latest episode of LaVeist and ClaVille.